I'm pleased to introduce this next segment of our training where we're going to talk about schools and the role they play in the choices families make on where to buy a home. As we all know, real estate agents are not experts in schools. In fact, when families ask about schools, agents typically refer them to third-party sources that often rank schools based on test scores. And we know that test scores don't tell the whole picture. In this next segment, we're going to hear from two national experts on the importance of diversity in schools and how diversity lifts all boats academically and in preparing children for the future. We're also going to hear how agents can talk about schools and still comply with federal fair housing laws. And finally, we're going to hear about an initiative in the Pasadena Public Schools where real estate agents have an opportunity to learn about those schools so they can talk reliably and accurately about them. I hope you find this information helpful.
The relationship between schools and real estate. I've heard people describe it as two sides of the same coin, school segregation and residential segregation. And that's because most school districts assign kids to school based on how close they live to it. So any patterns of segregation in the surrounding neighborhoods are going to be reflected in the school's enrollment. As our society has become more unequal, there has been a tendency for affluent families, I think increasingly, to view schools as a commodity attached to the neighborhood where they're purchasing a home. So essentially, we have said it's okay to buy the rights to a public school in these really highly sought after neighborhoods and high status schools.
Even though a lot of the attention is around for poor and minority children who without these interventions often lack those school environments, what's critically important to understand is for non-Hispanic white children, when they go through schools without access to diverse school environments, they often end up leaving without empathy for different perspectives, different cultural perspectives, have higher levels of prejudice and higher levels of racial intolerance.
Segregation breeds fear and misunderstanding, and it creates a vicious cycle. White students are and have been among the most isolated racially in schools. And so as those white kids become adults, they fear the unknown and they seek segregated white spaces out for their own families and their own children. School integration is a way to break that cycle by exposing kids to different groups at early ages before prejudice really takes root. That's one of the crucial reasons why we should pursue it. Public schools serve 9 out of 10 of our nation's school children. It is the institution that most kids encounter first. And to make sure that they're encountering a strong, intentionally diverse school, I think will pave the way for much better race relations in the future.
By advancing school integration, what we were able to document is with nationally representative evidence, we saw one of the largest narrowing of educational achievement gaps by race, in earnings, adult earnings gaps by race, health disparities. All of those adult attainment outcomes closed much more rapidly for cohorts that were exposed to integrated schools. And none of those positive benefits that were experienced primarily for African Americans came at the expense of non-Hispanic whites. Rather, it was a win-win where everybody exposed to the better and more improved educational schooling conditions had better outcomes in adulthood.
Historically marginalized students who attend integrated schools are more likely to perform higher educationally and to have higher educational and occupational attainment. That's in part because school integration is related to equalizing resources, and it also connects students to high opportunity social networks that contain lots of informal information about jobs and college going, for example. But all students benefit. Learning in a diverse classroom gives you practice working across lines of difference. It gives you the opportunity to try to solve complex problems by examining them from multiple points of view. That is the definition of critical thinking. And I think in this present moment, it's really important to understand the social benefits linked to diverse schools. At a young age, really learning and understanding about other groups of kids can help reduce bias and prejudice. For kids, I don't think you can discount the importance of that, of the formation of cross-racial friendships. Bias grows from separation and fear, and school integration can help work against that.
What makes integrated schools work is a recognition that it's not just about assignment of students to schools, but it's about equitable access to school resources, including per pupil spending that reduce class sizes, that attract the highest quality teachers, that reinforce and promote teacher diversity. And when we do that at the earliest ages, beginning in the preschool years, we see substantial changes in the life trajectory of children. And what we're interested in is not just kids beating the odds, but us advancing policies and practices that result in changing the odds.
Children who attend integrated schools are much more likely to develop the cross-racial friendships that are at the heart of reducing prejudice. When you have an intimate friendship across a line of difference, whether it's racial, ethnic, religious, or otherwise, you're much less likely to stereotype about that group, and you're more open to learning about other kinds of difference as well. Partly because you really know somebody, you see them. So you're less likely to take that mental shortcut and generalize about the group more broadly. So that cross-racial friendship is absolutely a goal that we should be working towards, both in society and with school integration.
What studies have documented is that housing prices for the same quality unit are 2.4 times higher when near high-performing schools than when that same housing quality unit is in near school boundaries that have low-performing schools. And it's the residential segregation among families with children that is the highest. And that's because of the fervent search for quality schools that's been capitalized into housing prices.
What kind of citizens do we want to create for a multiracial democracy? And I think when we start thinking about the answers to that question, we'll realize that trying to buy the rights to a racially homogeneous, white, and affluent school isn't really going to be the best kind of preparation for our children and for the future of our country. I think too often, and I know how addictive those real estate apps are, but too often families rely on a really simplistic school rating from an app like Great Schools or something that they clicked into on Zillow. It's hard to capture all of the different elements that go into a school with a single rating that is often powered by test scores, which we know are influenced by lots of opportunities outside of schools, as well as what goes on inside of them. So before taking those ratings at face value, get to know the school and then make your decision.
And real estate agents actually play a vital role and a catalyst to the information dissemination that promotes information about not only quality homes, but the communities that promote quality schools.
I think real estate agents have a lot of power. You build a relationship with your clients, they trust you, they trust your advice. And so to the extent that your advice can be in the direction of being open to exploring a school or a neighborhood that perhaps they didn't have on their radar before, a racially diverse school or neighborhood. I think, it's those individual decisions that we make that support broader structures of discrimination. So just helping to tip the balance of those individual decisions towards more integration instead of more segregation, I think, is a vital role for real estate agents.